welcome to the deep dive. Okay, think about Switzerland. You probably picture, neutrality, diplomacy, maybe chocolate, mountains, peace.
The classic image, bro.
Exactly. But what if I told you that underneath that really serene surface,
Yeah.
researchers are finding its gene pool is anything but uniform?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into what makes the Swiss genetic story so, well, intricate, maybe misunderstood, and actually surprisingly important.
It's quite a surprising idea, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah, what's fascinating is some scientists have even described Switzerland as a living genomic atlas of Western Europe.
Wow. A living atlas.
Yeah, so we're going to explore how this landlocked alpine country became this really rich intersection point for ancient Celtic, Roman, Germanic, even Slavic and Mediterranean lines.
All packed into one plate.
All compressed into one country, yeah. With 4 official languages, dozens of distinct micro-regional identities. It's complex.
So how does that even happen? The most quote-unquote neutral country in Europe holding one of the most genetically layered populations. It seems like a bit of a paradox.
It does, and, historians often point out that Switzerland's mountains, well, surprisingly, they didn't just isolate people, they actually segmented them.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Segmented, not isolated.
Exactly. So over centuries, you had communities settling in these distinct valleys, and that led to, unique dialects, different customs, and crucially for our topic, specific gene flow patterns.
So they kind of developed in parallel pockets.
In a way, yes, but there was still mixing. A lot of studies, they consistently show this really deep ancestral mixing going way back.
Okay, so history and geography suggest it.
Yeah.
But do we have the hard genetic data to back that up? Like actual DNA evidence?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. For instance, there was a landmark Swiss DNA study from ETH Zurich back in 2017. They looked at specific genetic markers.
Okay.
They focused on what are called Y-DNA haplogroups. These are basically ancestral family lines passed down just from father to son.
Right.
And they found that, yeah, sure, the common Western European markers like R1b were there, as you'd expect.
Right.
But they also found significant percentages of markers like E1B1b and J2. Now, those are typically linked more with Mediterranean and Balkan populations.
Interesting. So not just Western Europe.
Not at all. It clearly points to that deep mixing, probably through things like trade, Roman colonization, movement across the Alps.
And does it work the same way on the maternal side?
It does, yeah. They also looked at mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, which tracks the female line, and that reflects lineages from both Central and Southern Europe.
So similar story.
Very similar. You see specific groups like H1, U5b, T2. These point to ancient trade routes, migrations north and south, right across the Alps. So basically, Switzerland isn't just geographically between countries. Genetically, it seems it's kind of built from pieces of them.
That makes sense. But here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. Despite all this ancient mixing and, modern globalization, researchers have found that Switzerland still has these remarkably distinct regional genetic clusters. How's that possible?
That's the fascinating part, isn't it? It seems contradictory.
Yeah.
But more recent studies using really advanced genome-wide analysis, like one in 2020 from the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics, they looked at over 5,000 Swiss individuals.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And they found that the genetic distinctions between, say, German-speaking, French-speaking, and Italian-speaking Swiss, they weren't just detectable, they were statistically significant.
Really? So you can actually see the language border in the genes, sort of?
To a degree, yes. And these genetic distinctions, they lined up pretty closely with historical settlement boundaries. It suggests this amazing preservation of ancient patterns somehow.
Can you give us a concrete example, like a specific region where this really stands out?
Certainly. One really stunning example comes from the Valais region. People there were found to have genetic signatures dating back, get this, over 1,200 years.
1,200 years.
Yes, and showing surprisingly limited admixture, mixing, compared to other parts of Switzerland over that time.
So they remained relatively distinct for a very long time.
Extremely distinct. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, well, it's profound. It means Switzerland is maybe one of the only European countries where this kind of ancient population substructure still survives at a level you can actually measure today.
So it's like a living lab for history.
Exactly. A living laboratory for understanding how people moved, settled, and how diversity formed across Europe.
Okay, so we have these really unique genetic findings. Now, whenever you talk about genetics and specific groups, things can get a bit tricky, can't they? What are the implications here?
Indeed. That's the spicy part, as you might say. It definitely raises some important questions. As genetic research gets more public attention, you do see some Swiss nationalist groups trying to use this idea of genetic uniqueness.
Ah, to argue for what?
Well, sometimes to argue for a kind of ethno-regional purity. This seems to happen more in some politically conservative cantons.
Hmm.
But, bioethicists strongly warn against this. Using subtle genetic variations to draw hard cultural or ethnic lines, it's often misleading, and historically it can be dangerous, especially in a country like Switzerland that prides itself on multicultural governance.
That's a really important caution. But are there other sides to this? Maybe less controversial applications?
Yes, definitely. On the flip side, some researchers are arguing that understanding and maybe even preserving this regional genetic diversity could actually be medically beneficial,
How so?
particularly in the growing field of genome-based precision medicine. Knowing about these local variations could potentially lead to more tailored treatments down the line.
I see. So potential medical benefits versus the risk of misuse.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, and that line between, say, celebrating genuine cultural heritage and slipping into genetic exclusion, it can be razor thin.
Okay, moving beyond the cultural and historical stuff for a moment, has this unique genetic makeup told us anything surprising about health, or maybe specific traits linked to, say, the Swiss lifestyle?
Absolutely. Switzerland has been quite advanced in genetic medicine, and some interesting patterns have definitely popped up.
Like what?
Well, for example, the prevalence of genes for lactase persistence. Those are the genes that let adults digest milk.
Ah, right, lactose tolerance.
Exactly. In ethnic Swiss populations, it's among the highest in Europe. We're talking up to maybe 92% showing active lactase production into adulthood.
92%, that's huge.
It is, and it's strongly linked to their ancestry, specifically their long history of alpine pastoralism, dairy farming.
So it's like a genetic echo of thousands of years living with dairy herds in the Alps.
That's a great way to put it, a living genetic echo. It shows how intimately our genes can adapt to environment and lifestyle over generations.
That is fascinating. Are there other health markers like that?
Well, yeah, researchers also point to a relatively high prevalence of a gene called HLA-B27 in some Swiss groups.
Okay, what does that one do?
It's interesting because it's linked to immune system efficiency, which sounds good.
Right.
But it also carries a higher risk for certain autoimmune conditions, like ankylosing spondylitis, a type of arthritis.
Ah, so double-edged sword.
Precisely, a perfect example. And another thing, despite Switzerland's generally healthy image, scientists have found pockets of inherited cholesterol disorders, things like familial hypercholesterolemia.
Where are they finding those?
Often in more remote alpine populations. The thinking is it might be due to genetic bottlenecks that happened in these isolated mountain communities over time, basically reduced genetic diversity in small, isolated groups.
Right, the founder effect, maybe?
Could be related, yes.
Okay, we mentioned the 4 official languages earlier, but you said something truly remarkable, that these language borders actually seem to roughly mirror genetic boundaries. That sounds incredibly rare for a modern country.
It truly is quite rare. It makes Switzerland this unique case study where genetics, culture, and language seem to have evolved almost in parallel. You don't see that very often in modern nations.
So can you give an example of that linkage?
Sure. Take the Romansh-speaking communities, mostly in southeastern Graubünden Canton. Genetically, their gene flow patterns often look closer to northern Italians than they do to, say, German-speaking Swiss from nearby regions.
Wow, reflecting ancient movements across the Alps again.
Seems likely, yes. It reflects those historical connections southwards.
And what about the French and German-speaking areas? Do they fit patterns from neighboring countries too?
They generally do. French-speaking Genevans, for instance, tend to show higher genetic admixture from populations in southern France and the Savoy region.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, German-speaking Swiss typically align more closely, genetically speaking, with southern Germans and Austrians.
So it's this clear illustration, really, of how all these different layers, language, culture, geography, history, are just deeply woven together in the Swiss genetic fabric.
Exactly. Intertwined.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it leaves us with a really profound question, I think. Is the Switzerland gene, so to speak, special because of what it contains, the specific markers? Or is it more about what it connects?
That's a great question, and I'd lean towards the latter. It doesn't really define a single monolithic Swiss people.
No.
Instead, it tells this incredibly rich, layered story A story of human movement, of convergence, separation, survival,
Yeah.
all profoundly shaped by both the mountains and the flow of history through those mountains.
Hmm.
And, in today's world, with rising nationalism in some places and all the direct-to-consumer genetic testing, Switzerland might just be a perfect, complex case study. Well, it shows how diversity and structure, these distinct regional patterns, can coexist within one nation. They don't necessarily have to cancel each other out, which maybe raises an important question for you, the listener.
What do you think? When we learn about a country's unique genetic story like this, does it mainly reinforce distinct identities? Or does it ultimately highlight our shared complex human journey? Drop us your thoughts. Because, well, Switzerland may be neutral, but this conversation definitely isn't.